Good evening, everybody. Yat ine shik doshizne sheya Tatiana Banali inishia koto nasha nanis ejitachi nashasha dine bashishin akut ego dine stanishli. My name is Tatiana Banali. I am from Shiprock on the Navajo Nation. I am the Zuni clan of Tachi'ni and born for the Tiwa Bear Clan. And I'm currently here in Lenape Hoking these days. Thank you so much for everybody joining us today. This is our fourth installment of this series. The series is hosted by the American Indian Community House to provide an intentional online space to collectively explore and discuss resources and information regarding Indigenous issues and conflicts that directly affect us today. Through shared concern and efforts, we will discuss actions, solutions, and the many different ways we can contribute toward the movement and change making. Online in solidarity, led by and for Indigenous folks, we will focus on providing a space that is accessible, respectful, and in unity. The wonderful members of the Community House are also doing a great job of providing online native presence for us all, like during social quarantining. So if you could also like give the page a follow, check out the website, sign up for emails, and check the Facebook too for other events that are happening. With that said, I'm happy to have you all here. Our past social justice series focused on movements happening in Mashpee, Shinnecock, and Wet'suwet'en territories. Throughout all these installments, we are continuously working on collective understanding of how to garner intertribal solidarity, flesh out our definitions of self-determination, settler colonialism, and this one will be no different. Tonight, we'll be talking about COVID-19, mutual aid, and solidarity with Southwestern tribes in Indian country. COVID-19 is disproportionately hitting Native nations in the Southwest, with infection rates coming in right after New York City and New Jersey. Tonight, we will be talking with relatives from the Southwest nations to strengthen our ties and solidarity through mutual aid, education, and how settler colonialism fits into the pandemic response, and future steps we can take. We'll be sitting down with relatives from the Info Shop, the Pueblo Relief Fund, to hear more about what is happening on the ground and how we can help from Lenape, Muncie, Canarsie, and Shinnecock lands. This is a mouthful, sorry. We are joined by relatives in the Southwest region that are working in various efforts to support the communities and tribes in the area. We are lucky to have Brandon Banali, Shandin Yazi, and Alicia Correes here with us tonight. With that said, I will let our panelists introduce themselves. Just an introduction of who you are and like what you're doing, and Alicia will be joining us a little bit later into the evening, so we'll have her introduce herself when she comes in too. With that said, Brandon Banali, would you mind introducing yourself?
Sure. Yeah, it's everyone. She Brandon Banali Dashajine. Kini Ani Dene Nashlon. Ose Dene Bashishin. Onagahni Dene Dashache Adotho Baha Dene Dashanale. Kitili Ado Tisto Santesh Kij Nasha. Dene Hastin Akotego Nishle. Name is Brandon Banali. I'm of the Towering House people born for the Oraibi Hutvilla Hopi people. My Hopi clan is Hononangwa, which is the Badger clan. And I was born and raised by strong Dene women from Black Mesa, Arizona, and Crown Point, New Mexico.
Awesome. I'd also like Shandin Yazi, if you could please introduce yourself.
Sapo yat Shandin Hayasik Yazi Inisha, Ashihinisha, Akimo Autumn Bashushin, Torichi Dashache, Yome Dashanale, Agwajit Ego Shitaneto, Akimo Autumn do, Yome Astanin Islam, Chilhatsoa Dan Nasha, Shijaba Kayate in lay the hosdote at Akimo them the net. Hello, my name is Shandine Yazi. I am the Salt People Clan, born for the Gila River people, and my maternal grandfather is Bitterwater, and my paternal grandfather is Pascual Yaqui. And I currently reside in St. Michael's, Arizona. I am a collective member at the Info Shop, and I am also a part-time volunteer for the Navajo Hopi COVID-19 relief. So that's who I am. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Thank you for joining us. So Shandine and Brandon are both a part of the Info Shop, which is like an anarchist collective info shop that is kind of in the heart of the Navajo Nation. But I would like, Brandon, if you could describe a little bit more about the info shop and what you've been doing, you know, just like what the info shop is there for, and speak a little bit more about that.
Sure. So I'm one of the co-founders of this space, along with Shandine and other core collective members. Our membership has grown and shrunk over the years from, everyday life happening, but there's been a core group that's been around. So we're a Dene feminist collective with anarchist and socialist communist tendencies. And we operate with a decolonial aspect with all of our organizing actions and projects. So how we first started was, it was myself and my partner, Redmilla Cody, and we had just moved back to the res and started to feed folks. I mean, we had noticed that the majority of groups feeding the so-called unsheltered or folks in need were your typical groups that took advantage of these situations to proselytize or to push an agenda. And so we wanted to counteract that what they were doing under the old motto, solidarity, not charity. And so we started feeding folks every weekend. It eventually led to us getting an actual space, the info shop. And we had done our research. Info shops typically come from an anarchist tradition. It's more about offering free access to literature and knowledge, basically, and to also be like a so-called radical organizing space. And as far as I know, obviously we drew a lot of inspiration from a good relative of ours, Tatiana Banali, and the info shop he helped to found, the Alahoan info shop in Kintlana, so-called Arizona, or so-called Flagstaff, Arizona. And as far as I know, their info shop was the first indigenous founded info shop within the entire so-called United States. And as far as we know, we're the only info shop of its type within a so-called reservation that's stridently decolonial, stridently anarchist, and stridently communist as well. So what we do is we offer workshops, seminars on indigenous feminisms, as well as decolonial socialism and decolonial anarchism. But we also, every Saturday for the past 3 years, we've been feeding the unsheltered and providing clothing and other critical supplies. One of the big things that we've been able to do was partner with the hospital in Fort Defiance and bring a mobile health clinic to the area where our info shop is located to provide health services to folks who don't have a vehicle to go to the hospital, being that there's only 10 hospitals or health clinics within the entire reservation. And so to provide more access to healthcare needs. And we also, for a time, we're doing once per month, we're doing STD testing as well. And so it was more about offering services. And then lately, we had been in the midst of a campaign to build a treatment center on the Navajo Nation, because none exist at this point. And that again goes into our philosophy of solidarity and not charity. We're not just sustaining the symptoms of colonialism and capitalism, but we're actively seeking to defeat it. And so I'm sure Shandine can speak more about that, but that's how the space was founded.
Awesome. Thank you. Shandine, would you like to chime in there?
Yeah, so I've been a core member and we were founded in 2017 in April. So we just celebrated our 3rd year being open and running. So yay. um, but yeah, I've met Brandon and Redmilla through the info shop, and I had same thing. I was doing kind of like meals on my own, and I would kind of just like serve people like tushchin, which is blue mush, to our unsheltered folks. And I was kind of just like here and there going to every like punk and like music scene. Like we have DIY shows, which is like hosted by Chapter House. And then there's some shows like with Bisodi Records and productions. So I was really appreciative of all the friends I've known through the music scene here on the reservation. And it's pretty big. And that's how I got a little bit of youth organizing. And I just wanted to like, educate people on how our unsheltered relatives were being treated, and, how the struggle is out there for them, having no home, no shelter, no treatment center that's really there or available. Everything is mainly for people to go out of the reservation and not in and stay. So, and even being sent off to like border towns, and there's a lot of border town violence, and that's probably something that we're going to also bring up as well in terms of how they're treating our unsheltered relatives in Gallup, Flagstaff, Farmington, and all the neighboring areas, even Page, Arizona, and how they're enduring violence at this time. But yeah, like that's just what we've been doing in terms of like, we used to do like our before COVID-19, but we're still trying to do it, is our solidarity meals. And it's like with that philosophy is, it's not charity, it's solidarity. And so we've been handing out some like awesome tonka bars and some protein bars with water. And we're trying to figure out like how to do the DIY hand station setup so they can wash their hands. It's unfortunate that we had some hand sanitizer, but anyway, I don't really want to go into that. But yeah, we try to avoid giving out the hand sanitizer just because we don't want to cause any more harm or anything happening to them. And so that's what we're just working on right now. But yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. So it sounds like the Get Info Shop, for people who don't know, and I know firsthand that they've been continuously like doing like mutual aid. And I'm curious, like what either you, Brandon, or Shandine, like how does Indigenous like teachings and philosophies kind of coincide with like mutual aid? Because like this is kind of like a newer term for people that are non-Indigenous, that and something that they're learning about. And I'm wondering if you can kind of speak a little bit to that and where that came from, in your own words.
I can go first. So the ideology for a Dina person, or a Dina-centric ideology, is keh means to have kinship, to have the compassion, to have, that it's just like an instinctive thing to do for one another, is to care for one another, to make sure they're okay. It's like checking in a hajo bot, which means to have that caring, that kindness, that gentleness, and then also having, maybe if we need to, like that hushket mentality, which is to be just a little bit assertive with some things and straightforward. And with those two being combined, that's just how we work and how we function pretty much at our space. But with how we've been doing mutual aid, and to me, it's just like what we Diné people have been doing, and a lot of us Indigenous people have been doing for centuries, is just checking in with one another, talking with one another, communicating, just to see like, what are your needs? What is it that you need? How can we help? And just really listening and hearing what people are going through, and also what, what are their needs right away, their immediate needs. And from everything that we're hearing and what we're listening to, it does get frustrating because there's a whole political system with how our government has been set up with the Navajo Nation. And that's really kind of altered the way we think about K'e. K'e isn't just like, me and you, because we have a clan, we're family. It's more like they're our relatives. Everybody is our relatives between, like, it's a whole spiel with fundamental law, but it's like everything around me is my relative, the earth, in nature, our relatives who are not non-Diné, everybody's my relative. And well, the most important thing that we go by is K'e does not discriminate. So we make sure that we're not, we're trying to dismantle all that mentality of being like, well, if they're not Diné, we shouldn't help them, we should help our own, that kind of mentality. So we're kind of just like reminding people, K'e isn't just within, your community, it's within everybody's community, within yourself helping others. And that's just how I think this is how the mutual aid is really helpful, because there's some people who are understanding that, and they get that there's people all around the reservation that need help right now. And some people are just stepping up and, either signing up with the Navajo Hopi COVID relief, or just doing their own thing, like what we're doing right now in our communities, in Fort Defiance, St. Michael's, Hunters Point, and just a little bit of neighboring areas. So I'm really thankful for that, and that's just all I have to say.
Thank you. And you brought up like a lot of great points there, but I'd also like to give Brandon a chance to chime in on that.
Yeah, so mutual aid is considered an anarchist term, but it's also, I don't want to have it be co-opted by strictly anarchism or socialist ideals as well. Ultimately, mutual aid is about the reallocation of resources, a fair reallocation of resources, and not supporting structures of hierarchy or power over another, which is what charities are. Charities, they reinforce those structures of hierarchy. They basically control the poor through charity. They control these structures of power with charity. So Indigenous mutual aid is ceremony. I know that term gets used a lot, but again, from a Diné perspective, when we prepare for ceremonies, we already have our roles and responsibilities to provide for everyone that's there. And then to continue those roles and responsibilities outside of ceremony as well. As human beings, we're all naturally empathetic to each other's situation. We're naturally gifted with compassion and the need to help. That's where we are. That's just not a Diné thing. It's a human trait. It's a human gift that we also share with our non-human relatives as well. So to take that perspective of mutual aid is to ensure a healthy and dignified life for everyone. That means not taking more than is necessary. That's not just a Diné trait. It's a Diné teaching and Diné philosophy for sure. But you'll find that every other society has these same so-called checks and balances to reciprocate, reallocate, and to make sure that folks are living healthy, dignified lives. And every time we see an imbalance in that structure of power, when hierarchies or ruling classes emerge, then we begin to see the consequences of that imbalance. And the greatest imbalance of our time is capitalism, what we as Diné would call a monster, along with colonialism, racism, and patriarchy. All four are the enemies of the Diné. So through mutual aid, we not only just provide, food and basic supplies to get you through the day, but to take that philosophy of power within, the Navajo philosophy of Nsahakes, which is critical thinking and planning, to have people to empower themselves through self-education, through skill sharing, through learning ways to be self-sufficient, not just for yourself, which capitalism has created this hyper-individualistic competition between ourselves, but making sure that you empower yourself so that you're able to provide for the whole, for the community, for the health of yourselves and your families and your relatives. And when we talk about relatives, and as Shandine mentioned earlier, kinship, that means kinship with the land, kinship with our non-human relatives, kinship with the rivers. And so to reciprocate good kinship through mutual aid from an Indigenous point of view and philosophy is how we operate at the Info Shop.
Awesome. Thank you so much. That's such a wonderful definition. And I think it kind of touches on all of the points that I think are important. I love that the Info Shop and other, Indigenous led resources and organizations have been doing, things like this before, and they will well after. So I think that's something to keep in mind, for other organizations that you encounter during this time, just to kind of keep them accountable to continue to provide that support to all of our relatives, whether it be here in Lenapehoking, Canarsie, Munsee, Shinnecock land. Yeah, but I love that. I also wanted to address something that Shandine, you mentioned, the Navajo Hopi Relief Fund, and I also really appreciate that about Indigenous communities, as that, I think this kind of ties in with kinship, but there is this innate sense of intertribal solidarity that we kind of rely on too. And I think that's something that the Info Shop is, building relationships with these other organizations that are doing good work, like the Tala Hogan in Flagstaff, as well as with the Navajo Hopi Relief Fund, and I know that that's one of the initiatives of the Info Shop is to continue to develop those relationships, the link that you shared, the link tree that is tied to your your Instagram is a bunch of different organizations that are Indigenous led that are solely there to provide help and resources. But yeah, I wanted to know if you could speak a little bit about how that relation developed and where you see it going. Yeah.
Sure. So it is important to build these relationships, and part of this is to, important aspect of mutual aid is decentralization. You don't want to replicate systems of power or imbalances of power when providing mutual aid. And we're seeing that right now with a co-option from the Navajo Nation government going against people who have been providing relief work since the early stages of when we knew that this pandemic was going to get more serious for our people. For example, the Info Shop has been providing mutual aid not only every weekend, but as soon as we heard that it's going to get very intense here on the Diné territory, we began to think, okay, we have a food bank, we have supplies, let's get this ready. But we also realize we're limited in the resources that we have and the space that we have to provide food for our community, where we're getting hundreds of requests. And so, of course, it requires reaching out to other groups and building an autonomous network that would survive beyond the pandemic. I mean, this is in every crisis is opportunity, right? So this is an opportunity to build, to remove ourselves from the monsters of capitalism, colonialism, racism, and to see and to imagine what that foundation could look like. That's an opportunity now for everyone to realize that like this is a way forward, so to speak. So it's important to build those relationships early on and to acknowledge kinship. And I know for Diné people, we're very spread far apart, but we're also sort of homogenous in that we all have the same philosophies. You might have different religious practices, but we still have a grandma or grandpa who told us, you know, this is the way to be as Diné. This is how you are to, you know, to be as Diné. Some of us who are fortunate to have those teachings. And so those of us who had the privileges of those teachings, that's our responsibility to live out those teachings as well and to promote, you know, good kinship. So good kinship is working with other people. I mean, you don't have to like each other, but, you know, as we all want the same thing for our people. You know, we all want them to feel safe and secure and fed. And we'll find ways to work around that. But again, most importantly, that it's decentralized, that we don't replicate systems of power or unequal balances of power, that we maintain our autonomy, because our autonomy will be our strength and has always been our strength as Diné and Indigenous people.
Thank you. I just noticed that Harrison, one of the founders of Desert Indigenous Collective, has joined us on the call. Harrison, if you could please introduce yourself and introduce the Desert Indigenous Collective. The floor is yours.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Harrison Gorman. Harrison Gorman, Dashijine, Toy Glini Nashalakiani Bashichin, Tenjikine Dashichet Najini Dashnella. I am currently in Mesa, Arizona. I'm one of the founders of the Desert Indigenous Collective. We just recently started a few weeks ago. A few Indigenous relatives of mine kind of gathered together to provide mutual aid for the community here in the Valley. We kind of centered Indigenous people at first, but kind of like what the previous discussions talked about before, we are reaching out to other communities as well and trying to provide aid. We haven't received like a lot of support or a lot of, I guess, requests for support, and mostly because we're really small and there's just a few of us. But I'm really happy to join the discussion, and I kind of mostly want to learn a lot from what other people are doing. Hopefully we can replicate that or use some of those practices, strategies, or methods to increase our level of support for the community. I think we're aiming to, I think we modeled some of our efforts off the info shop, which is also here. I know I reached out to them a few times and they kind of gave me some advice, and it's great to see them here as well. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us today. I guess like moving forward while we're waiting for Alicia, I guess I've been kind of avoiding this question, but I think it's very important to recognize, the different ways that this pandemic is hitting different communities. I think there was news that was just released like earlier this week that the infection rate was third to New Jersey and New York City, which is heartbreaking, especially considering, the vast difference in population size. And I guess if you wanted to address that in any way that you feel comfortable, I know this is kind of like a tough question, but like I think it is important to recognize, border towns, infrastructure, and like how settler colonialism, plays a big role in like a lot of these situations that we're seeing. And despite all odds, like I'm so like, I'm so proud that there are places like Info Shop that exist that are, you know, helping our relatives through this time. But yeah, so if you could speak to that, that would be great.
Thank you for allowing us to answer that question. You know, there's a lot that goes into why we're at, but doesn't mean that it's vague or it's a mysterious thing. You know, there are policies and structures in place that exacerbated these problems that Diné people or all Indigenous peoples are facing. So that's one part of it. And the second part is, and I got to hand it to actually our hospitals here, but they've been doing really great on testing. And that's probably why we have better numbers and better data than most states who are basically leaving their heads in the sand. I know a lot of the hospital I work at has been really great on testing. And so I think that's why the numbers may be skewed. I mean, obviously it's very high, but I think we're just doing a really good job at testing. Because if you follow the formulas and metrics for every person that's infected, you know, multiply that times 3. And so that's you'll get the real number there. But going back to the systemic issues, and again, we can only speak from a Diné perspective, but these same policies, these same US policies still affect Indigenous people everywhere else. And that policy is the destruction of Indigenous lives and lands, you know, to feed a capitalist economy. You know, like colonialism facilitates that. Settler colonialism facilitates, is the conveyor belt that feeds capitalism. And so from a Diné perspective, and you can visit us on our website, is that we've been touted as a so-called sacrifice zone. Initially, basically all boils down to Navajo and Hopi people sacrifice our lives and lands mining coal so that we can power what's called the Central Arizona Project. And the Central Arizona Project is a canal system that moves water from the Colorado River to the Southwest. So Navajo and Hopi people were sacrificed so that the Southwest economy could live. It's when we talk, and I know other news stories and webinars discuss this, the focus is on poverty, and they think that poverty is a choice, that we chose to live the state, that we choose to live without running water, that we choose to have 13 grocery stores for a population of 190,000 people within the reservation, that we choose to have understaffed, under-equipped hospitals. That's not a choice for us. You know, the U.S. policies and regulations in place now prevent us from living healthy and dignified lives, prevent us from having access to clean water and unpolluted lands. So again, I could go into more and more detail about that. That's probably another webinar with other folks involved. But you know, this isn't a choice. You know, this is the situation that we're in, and I hate the term like we'll survive this, or that we're resilient. And we had to think beyond simply surviving or simply being resilient, but building a network, empowering ourselves, empower our communities, so that we don't have to rely on just surviving or just being resilient, but focusing on building a healthier future for ourselves. That doesn't include the United States. That doesn't include capitalism.
Shandine, would you like to address a little bit of that or pass?
Oh, wait. No, Brandon's completely right. And we've been approached by NBC, a couple other, like, I guess, well-known media sources, fake news. No, but we've been approached and it's really awkward, you know, like when they ask us, can you get footage of what it's like there? And to us, we refer to it as like poverty porn. And it's only because people want to see us like just struggling. And it's really frustrating because it's like, why would you want to like see that? Like, I know the reality is that this is happening, but you don't need to invade somebody's privacy, you know, there's all these other things that we try to respect in terms of people's autonomy, and even just respecting someone's anatomy, like saying like, I'm not going to take your picture, I'm not going to record you because this isn't right. And it's getting frustrating, I guess, like overall with border town violence, and with even our own government, like here with the Navajo Nation. I'm only speaking on behalf of the Navajo Nation. And I know we're now, because of the legislation that was signed last month, I forgot which one it was, but it was just to shut down the chapter houses. And people who don't know what chapter houses are, they're essentially a community outreach that's supposed to be for the community, for everybody that's in the surrounding area. They go there for meetings, they go there, it's supposed to be the place where you can talk about your community. But that's shut down, and a lot of these infrastructures have water, they have wells attached to them, they have a dumpster for people to take their trash. And that's the other thing, is like there's so much trash now piling up because people are just, you know, unable to take their trash to the dump. There's only one treatment, like waste treatment center, and that's in Winter Rock, Arizona. So there's just one doing the whole thing for the Navajo Nation. And that's really frustrating because now they're not allowing public access. So it's getting a little bit frustrating here and there with things shutting down. And I'm okay with that, but it's just like, in terms of like things shutting down, like I'm okay with like only the essential businesses being open. And that's true. Like there's only 13 grocery stores out there. And, you know, it's even more frustrating when, you know, Gallup and other places I know that are boarding areas to the Navajo Nation, you know, they start to discriminate against us because they're saying there's such a high number of Navajo people that have COVID-19. I'm looking on the website right now, and that's the Navajo Nation Department of Health. And there's about 1,769 people who have tested positive for COVID-19. And there's about 59 confirmed. I know about at least 5 people who are from the Navajo Nation who have passed from COVID-19. And it is a touchy subject, you know, and it, you know, we really, really try to tell the youth and others who are just, you know, not understanding that you need to just stay home. And that's the other thing, is like sometimes we forget that it's so easy to tell someone to stay home, but what if they don't have a home? What if they have nowhere else to go? And this is another thing why we really wish that there was more shelters available for our people who are displaced and even people who are in unsafe situations. We really wish that there could be a place you can stay here until maybe, who knows when this can pass over, but there's maybe like an abandoned, renovated motel and you can use this. You know, we're not utilizing that. Like there's all these hotels that we're here for tourists. Why don't we open that up for the people? Why don't we allow the people to stay there? And, you know, there's all these other things, but it's really frustrating trying to plan, trying to think, only one person. And I'm trying my hardest not to get, you know, doing the mutual aid and volunteer work that I do. I constantly get high anxiety, and I just worry for my own health and then others who are, you know, here. Luckily, I'm isolated, like my room or my house is actually disconnected from the original house. So I'm quarantine. But, you know, it's really frustrating, just because a lot of our people and our younger, it's more like people who are in their 40s or 50s that still have that mentality that, you know, I'm tough, I don't need a mask kind of thing. And it's just like frustrating because you just want to like give them a mask and be like, here, just put it on. And, you know, it's really hard. I still see people taking their kids to the grocery store. I still see little Masanis going to the grocery store or to Home Depot. And my only thing I could, like, I'm begging people, just please, like, stay like home, or just limit to one person going out. That's all I'm asking. And just when you get home, there's now a whole checklist thing that you can do for self-quarantining and everything like that. And you can always look on those links, like just research, take the time to research. And that's the other thing too, I don't think we're taking in account, is to have internet access and to have electricity on the Navajo Nation. You are privileged to have that. Some people aren't able to get online, and that's the other thing with students who've now switched to online. That's hard. You can't get good internet here, or just electricity to run your mobile phone, or everything. But there's all these other things that I'm just kind of like frustrated with at this time. But thank you. I don't want to take too much or ramble on.
For real. Yeah, I think you touched on like a lot of like interesting, and important things, especially like the internet. And I think that's like one way that our relatives here can help out. I know you mentioned the Navajo Hopi Relief Fund, and I know from volunteering with them that you can sign up to call and answer phones on the hotline and help do the organizing from the back end. I don't know if the info shop needs like volunteers to continue to do like work that requires internet or back end organizing in the same way. But if you guys do have like opportunities like that, I think that would be important to mention, because here in New York City, everybody has like a pretty good like phone connection and internet. So that's definitely, like you said, a privilege that we have, that we can dial into to continue to help our relatives wherever they are, to continue to do the work that they need to. But yeah, would you guys like to chime in? Is there anything that you guys can think of that relatives here in Lenapehoking, in Muncie, Shinnecock, Canarsie lands can do that requires internet or phone service or any other resources that we might have?
I could try to help answer that. So I think since we're partnering with the Navajo and Hopi Families COVID-19 Relief Fund, such a long name, we're going to get some help from that area, because as Shandine was saying, if you're going to go in and do this mutual aid work, it's very emotionally taxing. I mean, nobody should ever get used to seeing people suffer, or being used to seeing your people afraid and scared. And so that's another thing that happens. I'm pretty sure a lot of us are gonna carry these images with us for a long time, and as well. So it's good that we're getting some sort of pressure release, partnering with other groups. That's what the benefit is of as well, is partnering with other groups, is that you kind of share the struggle with them and not feeling such a burden on your shoulders as well. And I know Shandine has been putting in a lot of time doing this, despite all the things that we've been going through the past years ourselves, doing this work. So be prepared for that is all I could say as well. But as far as what our relatives there on that part of this continent can do for us, I mean, yeah, it's great to have the help with, digital assistance, so to speak. I think we got that part somewhat covered, and I'm not going to speak for everyone that's doing mutual aid work. Again, visit our link tree or visit our website to reach out to other organizations who might be in a different situation than we are, or not as fortunate as we are in having the help that we've had the past couple of weeks. And so in lieu of that, reach out to your local Indigenous communities and territories and help them. We seem to focus on one area, but work through your local councils and tribal leadership in your own Indigenous territories and use your privileges to help them on the territories that you're on, to work through them so that we can continue this meaningful kinship making and mutual aid relationships from an Indigenous perspective, rather than working through a large nonprofit or charity apparatus. But to facilitate that kinship and relationship making between us in the so-called Southwest and folks on the East Coast as well. And do what you can to facilitate those situations, do what you can to facilitate those relationships more and more, instead of relying, instead of relying on the nonprofit industrial complex to do that relationship building. We outsource so much of our humanity to inhuman structures. And so the best that we can do now is to rebuild our humanity by creating those meaningful kinship relationships again.
Yeah, I just want to say that's really important that, Brandon's bringing that all up. It was kind of frustrating to go through an entity like that, to have it have so many resources, being pulled in, like food, Jason Momoa water, some cool, brands to get featured into the media as well. But it was just kind of like, it was just, I know they're doing their best, and they are limited too on volunteers. I remember when I joined, there was about 5,000 people who were putting in requests for relief, and there was only 77 of us volunteers at the time. I'm sure the numbers now went up in terms of volunteers, but think about it like that. You have so many families who were requesting for food, requesting for water, requesting for wood, requesting for hay, and all these other things that they need assistance with. And you have to do so many maneuvers around when you're working with a nonprofit or an organization that wants to work as a nonprofit, because there's so many policies input. And it was just getting frustrated, because the way I work is I'm going to just do it right then and there. I'm not waiting for anybody. There's people I know that need this help, like immediate relief right now, and I'm not going to wait. And so I would just I'm very thankful that we had a food bank, and it was really a privilege. And I wish Kyle could join in with us. He's been doing an amazing job in Fort Defiance, Arizona. And he's been, he has his own little setup. We allowed him, we made care packages for him and to distribute to some of our elders in the community. And we thank all of the people who've donated masks. That was really, really, really helpful. And we are continuing to try and do that, in collecting masks. I know in the Lukachikay and Round Rock, Tekan, they need a lot of help as well with masks for elders, and I'm sure all around. But I try to look out through Facebook. I don't really have it anymore, but I try to look out through Instagram, and I'm really happy, and I wish Amber was a part of this webinar, because I have to give it up to some of the council members like Carlos Russell, who has been, helping out, Carlos Slater, my bad, in Round Rock, and he's been helping out with his community as a council delegate. And I wish my council delegate would step up and help us with other things, like how Carlos is at least knowing where and where people live, and just going up, not going directly to their door, but saying, hey, here's a package for you and your family. Where is that? I don't really see that kind of mentality with some of our leaders, and they need to be called out on that too. I know some of us are worried about that, but they need to step up and being leaders into that aspect, and just, listening, or keep a lookout for the people. And I don't know where my council delegate is. But yeah, that's just it. I'm not trying to bash on them in any way by saying they're, but I just wish that they would do more for our communities here.
Thank you. With that said, we are getting like some questions from the Facebook Live. So I kind of, I'm gonna go through some of those questions. Starting with where do folks donate masks to? Shandine, would you like to answer that, or even Harrison?
Brandon, would we say like our PO box?
If we have mailing address information on our website. So if you go to keinfoshop.org/donate, you'll find information there. That's also now Linktree as well. We'll link to that. But also, we had someone on Facebook mention our Global South relatives in Ecuador who, are also going to face the intensities of colonialism and capitalism by how severely their community is going to be affected as well. So again, when we talk about mutual aid, we're talking about, struggle that supersedes borders, that supersedes so-called nationalities, and reinvigorates those making ties and relationships with all humble people of the earth.
Yeah, thank you. And everybody can access that in the chat, and that will be something that we'll email out afterwards as like a resource as well. Let's see, I saw another question. In the meantime, Harrison, I was curious how your efforts are doing. I know it's kind of off of the reservation, but probably similar similar struggles. If you could speak a little bit to that.
Yeah, I think we are experiencing a lot of struggles. I think really we do need like volunteers and like people to go about doing work. I think every day we're getting quite a few requests to bring stuff to people, bring them supplies. Mostly what people are needing is just like supplies. There's a lot of fear about going out into public, and they kind of want us to kind of take on that role to them and kind of deliver things to them. I think, I think volunteers is probably one of our biggest struggles. And the other thing is like resources. We haven't gotten very much donations or like resources to actually distribute to people. And I know there's another question about like where people can donate masks to. So if you're willing to support the relatives out here in the Phoenix area, we're actually working with Akihat Shadine Home Care LLC. I think they're also working with the Navajo Hopi Relief Fund. So they also agreed to work with us in terms of like storing supplies, or if people want to go ahead and drop things off or mail things there. They have an address that you can go ahead and I think ship things to, and they're located here in Phoenix. And I think mostly we just need to get off the ground and get people involved in providing for the community. I think that's definitely our biggest struggle right now, because it's mostly just, I think there's like 3 or 4 of us who are working diligently, but, all of us are working full time through this crisis. So any support that we could get, we definitely appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Harrison. I just noticed that one of our other panelists dropped on to the call, Alicia Coriz from the Pueblo Relief Fund. Alicia, if you could please introduce yourself and then introduce the work that you've been doing with the Pueblo Relief Fund.
Hello, everyone. My name is Alicia Carice. I'm from the Pueblo of Santo Domingo. Let's see. I'm also a co-chair, or I guess work with the All Pueblo Council of Governors as a youth committee member. And just a heads up, I'm not the one organizing the Pueblo Relief Fund. I'm just speaking working in support of it. If you have any questions, you can certainly direct them to the executive director of the All Pueblo Council of Governors. And so that's apcg@indianpueblo.org. And I can drop that in the chat after this. But basically what the Pueblo Relief Fund is that it's being supported by the All Pueblo Council of Governors as well as the Indian Pueblo Cultural Center. But yeah, this relief fund is, you know, going towards our 20 Pueblo nations in New Mexico, and our sister Pueblo in Texas is Isleta del Sur. And so this is going towards, you know, the basic needs. Our governors saw the need to assist our Pueblo people, you know, because there's a lot going on in order to ensure the safety of our Pueblo people. And so this fund is also a tax exempt organization. So if you donate, get to write it off on your taxes. But yeah, that's basically it. I also do work with the Giwa Truth Youth Council. And so currently we're working on efforts to provide our community members as well as with our tribal members that are ensuring our safety with masks, as well as enlisting the help of our fellow Pueblo people that can sew, that are being shipped out materials as courtesy of the Pueblo Action Alliance. And yeah, that's currently what's going on in, I guess, in my little area. And so
Awesome. We're so glad to have you here. We have been fielding questions from Facebook as well as Zoom. We do have a question from Monica. Which Pueblo or Pueblos have the highest confirmed cases of COVID-19? And I guess if you could answer that, thank you.
yeah, so I know our Pueblos have also been heavily impacted. Currently, I know that San Felipe Pueblo is San Felipe Pueblo, Zia Pueblo, as well as Zuni Pueblo have been hit very hard by COVID-19, and so we're trying to help support them as well as our other Pueblos during this time.
Awesome, thank you. So we were just discussing, I guess the intersection of Indigenous philosophies and mutual aid efforts. I know you're also a part of the Red Nation, and the Red Nation has continuously done a lot of support for the community before, the pandemic, and will continue to do so afterwards. And I think this is kind of a moment where a lot of, these organizations that are popping up can have the potential to continue to provide these resources that are necessary and know that they're capable of doing that. But I was curious if you could speak a little bit about Pueblo practices and how they intersect with mutual aid practices, and how you've kind of, I guess, integrated them into, or how you've seen them integrated into the Pueblo Relief Fund or the Red Nation. Sorry.
Okay. I could talk about more on the mutual aid part. But yeah, Pueblos are very communal. Our communities are just very tight knit, and so I know myself growing up on the Pueblo, we were always taught to help out one another. That we're basically all relatives. We all share that same background, that same history, and so in order to help ourselves, we have to help each other. And so that's kind of where this, I guess, idea of kinship comes from. It's just stemmed from, I guess, our land-based communities, but also extends into supporting our community members that reside in urban areas. And so I know that Pueblo Action Alliance, there's some members that reside in urban areas that are still continuing to provide for their Pueblo people. and as well as supporting other initiatives that other Indigenous folks in urban areas, as well as the Albuquerque Mutual Aid, and as well as the Red Nation, who are providing meals to some of our unsheltered folks that have been also negatively impacted by COVID, and it's been very detrimental to them, seeing as there's no way for them to follow the stay-at-home orders that are enacted by Governor Grisham of New Mexico. And so but yeah, that's kind of how it stems into it. It's just basically following that rule that kinship is sacred and that we're all relatives here.
Thank you. So we have like a couple of questions coming in. I think I can answer the one from Sunny Sage Bybee. They ask, who goes to the most remote up past Red Mesa? And I think you could probably be in connection with the Navajo Hopi Relief Fund for that. There's like a help request form that you can fill out, and there's also a hotline that you can call to have assistance with filling out the help request form. And that will be taken care of. There's another question from Kaylee Shoshana Levine. Are masks the most needed item for donation? And I'll open that up to all of the panelists to speak to. And I think Brandon and Shandine already kind of touched on that, as well as Harrison. But are there any, I think like donations in general are very helpful. But if you guys could speak to that, I don't know if there's any other resources or help, or I guess like the question is item. So
okay, sorry. Hold on, let me look up real quick. So there is a midwifery program, which is called the Changing Woman Collective. They are in need of like diapers. There's an Amazon wish list, and it's for more information, email Kansas Begay at k.begaye@changingwomaninitiative.org. But they need some items on an Amazon wish list for mothers and soon to be moms. And so I think they need some help, and it is really hard when I go shopping. It's really hard to find any wipes or diapers in bulk and formula and all that. So that's another organization maybe to look into. But they have an Amazon wish list.
Awesome, thank you. Harrison or Alicia, are there any items aside from masks that are needed for donation?
Hi, I can answer. Definitely like disinfectants, any cleaning supplies, and like hygiene products. Same thing with baby wipes and diapers. Definitely all the stores around here are struggling to get that need, and kind of give people sell people what they need. So if that people want to donate to us immediately, I think toiletries and disinfectants would be the number one thing. I think we'll definitely need some masks as well. As a collective, we're trying to build PPE for ourselves, and that's something that's hard to come by, and that's something that's necessary for as long as we're going to continue to do this work. Yeah, I think, but other than that, I think really anything would be appreciated.
Awesome, thank you. At this point, I would like to open a Q&A for people that are joining us on Zoom. If anybody has any questions, you can write your name into the chat and we can move forward from there. But I'd also like at the same time to, I guess, like kind of ask the panelists if there were any actionable items that the participants here on the call can do right now. If there's anything like, even if it's silly, like a hashtag or something, I don't know, or even just sharing like resources, or yeah, like sharing the resources with a couple of other people. If you guys have anything of that sort, you can speak to that right now. If not, I will wait for questions.
Okay, this is Brandon, everyone. So I think for folks who are not on the net territory or in the Southwest right now, is to reach out to your local indigenous, again, reach out to your local indigenous communities again. It's just a sad fact that the net people always seem to dominate these conversations, but remember to reach out to your local indigenous communities, because more likely than not, they're also facing the same intensity that we are. It's just being underreported. So reach out to your local indigenous communities and fight with them, not for them, but with them, and uplift them with your privileges and powers that you have. So reach out to your local indigenous communities and territories first and work with them. And also hashtag Indigenous Mutual Aid, hashtag ACAB, hashtag, no, I'm just kidding. So that's what I have to go for now.
Awesome, thank you. And for people that are joining us from like other past series that we've had, that means like looking at the resources from the Solidarity with the Mashpee tribe, Solidarity with the Shinnecock tribe. So we're ready to go. Oh, Marley Lister asks, does the info shop take Bitcoin? Oh, you're on mute.
I said, I think he's being facetious, but we take turquoise. We take turquoise and we take shiny beads. And yeah, no, I'm just kidding. We take turquoise coin.
Lots of shells.
Okay, and so we have some other questions that I think like we can all answer. Do organizations or do donations have to go through an organization, or can I donate directly to those in my community that have immediate needs? I think they don't have to go through an organization if you have like a network, if there's a network already, but just make sure to do like your research and to keep in mind, you know, safety practices for, you know, sharing these resources. And that means like sanitizing it, social distancing, traveling by yourself to go get groceries, and communicating, I think, is important too.
Yeah, if you go to indigenousmutualaid.org, we list a lot more resources on how to build your own mutual aid networks and how to begin the mutual aid process. And it does cover a lot of that. I mean, it covers security culture from all aspects, from disinfecting to even how you communicate, as you were talking about, making sure that we're not collecting information that could be exploited and abused later on while we're performing mutual aid work. So that website's indigenousmutualaid.org.
Awesome, thank you. Alicia, do you have any actionable items that people could do? I know one of the things that I was thinking. Oh, okay, sweet. Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. Sorry, my Wi-Fi is all lagging, so I'm like, oh yeah, okay. yeah, so donations of masks and any and all PPE is like needed so bad for some of our communities that have clinics and are trying to, you know, trying to put forth their skills in protecting the communities through like testing. Also support some tribal crowdfunding, such as like the Zuni Relief Fund. So that relief fund is going straight to Zuni. I can drop the links later, or Tatiana, you have the links as well. Also supporting other organizations such as Pueblo Action Alliance that are, you know, looking towards that mutual aid by seeking out the you know, are people that can sew to be the, I guess, the workforce for providing masks for our communities. Also support of grassroots funds that service urban Pueblo people, such as Albuquerque Mutual Aid and the Red Nation, which I talked about previously. And then finally, just the emphasis on staying off the reservation and tribal lands. And that also includes like tourist destinations. So yeah, I know like a lot of people during quarantine are wanting to, you know, go out, take walks and everything. That's great, but just stay off Pueblo lands. I know we have a lot of, you know, places that we can, that we have like outdoor recreation spaces. Those are closed at this time. And yeah, just don't try and sneak on because we got, you know, tribal officials waiting at our boundaries. So we don't want you to get, you know, in trouble or anything. But yeah, that's one of the things I wanted to state. Yes.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. Sweet.
Hashtag give the land back.
For real. I guess like now, if everybody wanted to kind of like, I don't know, emphasize like Alicia just did, any like lasting points that you would like to address. And in the meantime, like I said, we have an open Q&A. So if anybody has any questions, you can feel free to drop those into the chat for Brandon Banali, Shandine Yazi, Alicia Cariz, and Harrison. Yeah, so if anybody wants to take the floor, go right ahead. Go ahead, Shandine.
My hands up. So Becky Jones just messaged me and she's wondering if we could also mention Navajo, our Manuelito Navajo Children's Home. And I did put a link in our chat just to look into more info on there. But this is in Gallup, New Mexico. This children's home does need food, cleaning supplies, and hygiene products. And I'm just really worried about, like, you know, like a lot of these facilities, you know, like children's homes, group homes, you know, senior centers, or like, you know, places like that. I think, you know, researching into that as well, if you can. If you don't want to donate directly to an organization, maybe research in your community or around like neighboring cities looking for Indigenous spaces or non-Indigenous spaces. There's also Black and Brown people who do need help. We shouldn't just always emphasize that it has to be specifically Indigenous people. It should just be overall. Like we should always keep that in mind with helping with others who are Black and Brown and POC, like all of our other relatives, like they need help as well. But if you're in an urban area, research that, see what people need in those areas. And yeah, hashtag stay off our land. Ew.
That's great. I think you bring up a good point, and about like, you know, like how many other like mutual aid organizations there are. And I think for the most part, we're like in New York City, we're pretty aware of like the efforts here in the city. But I also would like to bring that around to like the info shop link tree again, because everything is listed there, you know. Well, not everything, but like, you know, other indigenous led mutual aid and relief programs. So if you're interested in sharing that link tree, that would be something that you could also do. If nobody has any other questions, does everybody feel like they're prepared to go out into the world and be a little bit more direction and context? Awesome. Yeah, thank you everybody for being on this call.
Oh, sorry. So Ty brought up a good point. Send us medicine, like traditional medicines as well. We often forget to take care of ourselves while we're doing this work, and so when we don't have time to collect sage or cedar for ourselves often. And one time we got an order of masks and someone sent us chocolate, and then I think a couple of us cried because it was like someone actually thought of us, you know, people who are like doing this work, and you know, it does take a large emotional toll. So little things like that help. They help a lot.
And you can find the info shop mailing address on their website, so you can go and send them medicine from at their post office box. I don't know if Alicia, do you have the Pueblo Relief Fund for kind of, I guess, like individual, like your staff members' own well-being?
Okay. Yeah, I'm sure, because the Pueblo Relief Fund is you know, organized by the 20 Pueblo governors, and as well as the APCG staff, and also the Indian Pueblo Cultural Center. And so you know, I think just Pueblo people in general always try and take into consideration our prayers, and you know, making sure that we're putting meaning into the work, our heart, because this is truly for the people.
So for everybody that's attending, as well as people that have attended the past installments of this series, you will be getting a list of like the resources that we have talked through today. I do want to like open the floor for any last words, and that goes for anybody who's on the call or any lasting questions on Facebook. You can feel free to do that. We do have time up until 8 p.m. if needed. But in this time, I do want to kind of like give the mic to Sheldon to talk a little bit more about the other programming that the American Indian Community House is doing during self-quarantine and social distancing time.
Hi, everybody. Yeah, just a couple of announcements. We have tomorrow, Wednesday, we have the Sacred Spaces. We do that every Wednesday. That's open to the general public. There's a closed Sacred Spaces, which is for our elders talking circle, and that happens on the weekends, Saturdays and Sundays. We also have Fit Native TV, which was today. It was a live class, and we have that going on Friday. So everybody's welcome to join in on that. That's led by Tanis Paranto. And we have started, our executive director started a beading circle. So for anybody interested in learning techniques or being around other like-minded artisans, we have those on Fridays from 4 to 6. And then of course, catch us back here on Facebook for our lives Sunday from 3 to 3:30. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheldon. That's great, great, great. All great content. Thank you everybody for coming. I guess continue to keep an eye on all of the news that's going around. Sometimes you do need to, like, you know, take a step away, but it is important to keep an eye on on the news, to keep yourself updated, and, you know, keep an eye on like your relatives, locally and elsewhere, because this is definitely something that we're all experiencing together, wherever we're at, and it does extend past, like, you know, the Indigenous experience into Black and Brown, you know, experience, and everybody, you know. So just emphasizing to everybody to be a good relative, and to continue to reach out to your friends and family, and even to like your neighbors and people that you see like on a daily basis, because it's a challenging time for everybody, and it's good, you know, to keep an eye on the people that are a part of, you know, your home. So yeah. With that said, I also wanted to ask everybody if you've done the census. That's also something that's happening right now. And if you did, or if you're going to do it, just put that in the chat. Something that kind of is like in the back of the minds, like probably way in the back of the minds during this time, but it's important for a lot of like data places, like the Urban Indian Health Institute, to have this data to kind of keep an eye on, you know, other Indigenous issues such as missing and murdered Indigenous relatives, as well as, you know, unsheltered relatives, and all of these different issues in Indian country. And yeah, it takes like 3.5 minutes to do. And if you have any questions about that, or if you want to learn more about that, you can reach out to myself, Tanis Pronto, or anybody on the American Indian Community House. Yeah. Anyways, with that said,
Could I add something?
Yeah, go ahead.
This is a friend in New York too. I'm looking forward to meeting you. I just thought the Seventh Generation Fund for Indigenous Peoples, their way to contact them is 7, the number, Gen Fund. So it's 7 GENFUND.org. And they have grants for Indigenous peoples across the world to apply for. Right now, they're really on that. And so I just suggest that everyone that's here take a note, because there are resources available through them that apply to your way and the need for help right now. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. We do have like some other questions that are census related. I don't know if anybody knows any of that information in the Southwest. No? Okay. All right. But we do have this link here for Indian Collective that has grants for people that are looking for grants. Cool. All right. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for coming.
One more thing. The 7genfund.org is for any Indigenous peoples. Everyone in America who's Indigenous can apply for an send an application. Discuss the idea. Look at their website, because it is funding available for you now to apply for. I'm just going to put a second pitch in there. 7genfund.org. Thanks. You're all courageous. It's amazing the work you're doing, standing up for your people, and may everything work forward in a way that brings peace to everyone that's looking for it, and even those who aren't. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Thank you, Brandon, Chandine, Alicia, Harrison. I would like to, I don't know, if you wanted to say anything else, I give you that opportunity again, and from there we'll all sign off. And thank you again to everybody who showed up.
Okay, so before we sign off for everything, I would just like to ask if there's anybody interested, and really, I'm trying to get to a lot of things. There's a lot of things on my to-do list. There's so many, and it's hard because I'm only one person. But if anybody would like to, collaborate or do some work with me, I'm really trying to write letters to our leaders, or even just encouraging you to write leaders to your your president, your governor, our representatives, or anybody really who has that power or that position, just to write to them and remind them that, hey, we need help. This is how you can help. And maybe coming or collaborating together, maybe scheduling a Zoom call, and we can just start to write letters to our community leaders, or even our state leaders, or overall, just to remind them that we need help. In particular, I'm trying to get the mayor of Gallup and Gallup PD just to stop harassing our unsheltered relatives that are being put more at risk, being put into jail, where that's like signing them off for a death sentence, and that there's a lot of other places that when it comes to an unsheltered person, why are you putting them in jail with others that are just like, there's so many other people in there and you don't know who you're going to get exposed to. So just to remind them that you are accountable for killing people, you're accountable to murdering somebody. And there's this whack law now, or I'm not sure, I really have to read up more. There's a law that you could get charged for, I think, battery on an officer if the officer gets sick with COVID-19. And that's not fair. How do you know that person gave you COVID? And I don't think that's right. So there's some of these things that we also need to look into in terms of the logistics and the law. So I'm trying to go into law advocacy, and I'm trying to understand some of these things that are in place, but these are some of the things I think you should be like kind of educating yourself on too, is what are the laws and things that have changed now? What are the fines? What are different, what was the word I'm thinking for? What are some things that you can now face in terms of like a law? Like, are you going to get charged with something? Because for the Navajo Nation, when you have the curfew in place or stay at home in place, you can't leave. You can be facing $1,000 fine and maybe jail time. I don't think that's fair, especially for essential workers. And I think a volunteer and people who are going shopping for, Navajo, Hopi COVID relief, and people like us who are doing mutual aid, I think we should have that ability to go ahead and safety and reassurance that we're not going to be harassed by police, that we're not going to be arrested, that we're not going, because it's an intense feeling to have like constantly be on edge to like, am I going to get pulled over? And they have the right to do that and all these other things. And yeah, that's something I just wanted to bring up.
Thank you.
And then in lieu of appealing to power, continue to organize, continue to build up, to remove appealing to state and federal officials to create that life for us. Continue organizing amongst yourselves. Like I said earlier, in crisis, there's opportunity. And this is one of our opportunities now to strike a blow to crush capitalism, colonialism, and racism together. So continue to organize and continue to build that power within yourselves for our communities and each other.
Thank you. Yeah, that's definitely something to keep in mind all the time.
Mediation is a great tool as well. Getting some training for locally where we are, whoever is inclined in that direction, mediation is a great way to start. There's every state, I think, has a volunteer lawyers for the arts. And culturally speaking, you're really high on the list in terms of access to that, I would imagine, or you could make a case for it. They should be giving free mediation classes on occasion that somebody could drop into and then use those resources to build a team of mediators on the res or wherever. I'm most familiar with the Hopi people from an invitation and also from Wanda, who was the behavioral health director in Tuba City for the Dene people. So I'm just speaking from the heart here and suggesting something.
Yeah. With that said, I am going to go ahead and call it a night or an evening, I guess. It's like so early where Shandine and Brandon are. But yeah, thank you so much for joining us. And it would be interesting to do like a follow-up through like the email resources that I'll be like giving out. So yeah, just keep an eye out for on your email. Wait for the resources. I'll send that, and I'll be corresponding with all the panelists to kind of flesh out like a cohesive like list that you guys can look to. Thank you all for coming. Have a good night and continue to keep an eye on your relatives wherever they're at. And yeah, thank you all for coming. Bye.